ASMR Money Mentor. I hope you had a nice day. I hope you are relaxing, and ready to dive into this episode, number 20. We're still in 2009, talking through my thought process over the past many years about how, as you guys know, I was broke at 40, but in 2020 I got to $1 million net worth in about 15 years, maybe 16 years, somewhere in there. I like to teach people that they can do the same as long as they have income and a whole lot of discipline as well. And as I've shared with you, I mean, let's face it, a lot of people have income. Most likely, you have a dual income. Perhaps you and your significant other. You could have a dual income. You could be a dual income household. You may be a single income household, a sink or a dink. You may have children. You may not have children. And I am very well aware that people that have children, of course, have to hustle a little bit more when it comes to wanting to build wealth. They may have to work a little bit harder to make a little bit more money, to save and invest a little bit more. And you know, there are so many variables that come into this equation. For example, how old are you? How much money are you making? How much money do you think you need to sustain yourself without an income? I may have shared with you before, I don't like the word retirement. Retirement. I don't like that word. I don't think we should ever retire. Let me rephrase that. We can retire from a career, but I think we should segue into other things that we enjoy doing. And again, there's so many different equations of how somebody can build wealth. In subsequent episodes, I'll talk about that. It's so interesting to me that wealth is not really determined by the amount of money that you have or build in a nest egg. Somebody can have $500,000 and be richer or wealthier than somebody with $1 million. And as you're thinking through that, you would agree with me most likely that that is because of people have different expenses. And the person with lower expenses will always be wealthier than somebody that has more expenses and less. The amount of money that you have saved and invested is a very large number. But let's be real for just a minute. For those of you watching and those of you that have found ASMR Money Mentor, first of all, I applaud you because you probably want to learn and do better with money, and or you like ASMR whispers. Is it possible to whisper your way to wealth? I think it is. And see, now I lost my train of thought, which I'm going to do from time to time. I think I did that on another episode too, didn't I? Because I get so excited when I talk about money. But again, my thought process with that was that wealth is determined more weighted on the side of your expenses than the money you have, because you would need to have a lot more money to cover more expenses. So think about that. But let's continue on with today's episode, which is in episode 20. Remember, we're still in the year 2009. And over the past 2 episodes, I've been talking about, the action plan that I put in place in 2009. I'll never forget it. I also learned and started thinking about dreaming really big. And last time I spoke of the market and how in 2009, in March, the market started its upward swing, and I knew that would be to my advantage. I also, to segue into today's episode, began to travel quite extensively in 2009. And when I say travel, I mean business travel. So today, I would like to talk about how travel really became my social outlet. My business travel became my social outlet, and how, because of the way things turned out, and I'm so thankful, I accepted a position where I traveled to be with clients for up to 2 weeks. I mean, that's a lot. Not everybody can do that. In 2003, the company offered me the position that I'm in now, where I train clients, I work with clients, and of course I would have to travel to different cities. I remember thinking at this time in my life that knowing that travel, for some people, vacations, and that type of spending was really what got people staying broke. That was true in 2009, and it's true today in 2024, or whatever year you're watching this episode. So many people take expensive, lavish vacations. In fact, they think probably nothing of spending $10,000 on a vacation or $20,000 on a vacation. I remember in early 2009, as my travel started to ramp up, and I was traveling probably once every month or 2. Actually, on average, it was every 2 months, and I never complained to my friends. Never complained about being away for 2 weeks at a time, because I was young, fabulous, and broke. To quote my previous episode, which began in 2005, even 4 years later, I was still pretty broke. The recession, my money goes down. Now here we are in March 2009. I don't know, I had maybe $45,000 in my 401k, something ridiculous. But as I talked about last time, I started trying to get as much as I could into those investments every single paycheck. And I remember making a conscious decision during this year that I would no longer spend on vacations. No longer spend on vacations. And I did that because I knew I was doing a lot of business travel. And because I knew I was doing business travel, I thought to myself, how could I leverage I did not do that, then lifestyle creep could have corrupted my ability to grow my wealth in these early formative years. Very important formative years. For you guys watching me right now, you may be in a very important formative year. Maybe you're just starting out. Maybe you're looking for a money mentor. I'll talk about the basics of what I did. Right now I'm just talking about my thought processes through the past many years. And you might be right now in a year that you will look back in 15 years and say, I am so glad I made those decisions that I made in the year that you're watching this right now. I promise you that will come. I seriously doubt that in a year in the future, you'll look back and say, I am so glad I spent all of that money on all of those material items and those vacations that I don't really remember. Now, with that being said, if you do value vacations and you don't travel for business like I did, then yes, you'll want to create a budget where you give yourself that opportunity to spend on something that you love. No money mentor is ever going to tell you that you can't spend money on something you love. But you can learn to afford the things that are valuable to you. You just can't afford everything. Make sense? So, if you value vacations, then you can build that in your budget. But for me, back to 2009, when I was, just realizing that I was suddenly making all this extra money in my paycheck and my budget, which I'll talk about budgets later. But 2009, I think, was one of the very first early years that I had so much wiggle room in my budget. Wiggle room meaning I've got my income, I have my expenses, and guess what? There's something left over. And that something left over is what I put into my 401k after I funded my emergency fund, which then sat there. And it was during that year that I said to myself, I was in a wonderful opportunity not only to save and invest the money that I did, but I could also leverage the business travel to my advantage. For example, in 2009, I think I took 3 business trips. One to Chicago, Illinois, one to Detroit, Michigan, and one to Indianapolis, Indiana. Now, I live in Florida, so I would fly to these places. I mean, imagine going to Chicago. I was 43 years old. That was exciting for a 43-year-old to go to Chicago, a big city, and everything I did during the 2 weeks that I was there, including the middle weekend, was paid for my company. I would stay in the hotel for 15 nights. Amazing, right? Even through the weekend, because we did training and then support, and that happened through the weekend. So the weekend was mine. I would go into Chicago, I would go into Detroit, I would go into Indianapolis, and it gave me opportunities in my rental car to go explore cities and not spend a dime. All of my meals were paid for. That was a really wonderful, wonderful time in my life where, because I allowed the business travel to become my social outlet, it made saving and investing so much easier. In fact, saving a large amount of my money during those years. Does that make sense? So, sometimes you have to take what you have in your life that comes your way as a job opportunity, even though it might not be something you truly set out to do in life. Like for me, I did not set out to do what I do, but I'm certainly glad that I did what I did, if that makes sense, because the company treated us really well, employees in the group that I'm in, and having the business travel then again made it so much easier for me to save and invest because I wasn't wanting to spend on vacations. And again, as I mentioned earlier in this episode, that's not true of so many people in their early 40s. I would think that most people are spending quite a bit of money on vacations in their 40s, and I can understand why. But I'm so thankful that I had the business travel. So for those of you watching this episode right now, think about your own life. Like, what is your job? Are you able to travel? Chances are many of you can. Maybe not so much since the pandemic, I don't know. But maybe you can think of other things that your job allows you to do that you don't then need to spend on your own personal enjoyment, because again, having that opportunity to travel was huge. I used to go see my family on the company dime. How cool is that? I did that for 15 years. I traveled from 2003. My first trip was in July of 2003. And I traveled all the way through March of 2020 when the pandemic hit. And those business trips, I'll never forget. They were wonderful opportunities to enjoy and see other parts of the country, all the while I was sinking 30, 40, 50, 60, 70% of my income in each of those years. So think about things that you guys can do right now that will help you as you begin or continue your saving and investing journey. And just to anchor this back to what I spoke of in the episode earlier this week, again, 2009 being the beginning of the bull market. And remember, the bull market is when there's just a continued upswing in the market. It lasted so many years. The market, the S&P 500 was at 903, all the way to just over 5,000 today. Huge amounts of growth in the market that I was able to leverage. Now, as we move forward and talk through other episodes, again, remember, I'm going through my past. I'm telling you what I did. I'm telling you about my thoughts. We'll eventually get to a point where we start talking about what are the basic things you need to do. What did I do? And again, newsflash, it's not going to be all that exciting, but it's things that really do work. I would rather go for something that I know that has a 100% success rate than something that doesn't. And so I knew that doing just the basics, I would be just fine. Now, we will talk also about, I've mentioned this week several times that we're at the height of the market right now. I will eventually tell you guys where I'm at in terms of wanting to go into early retirement in the next year or two. I was just getting wind of the fact that my company may give us voluntary severance packages, which could be really good for me as a long-term employee with the company. It could not happen at a better point in my career. I'll talk more about that later. But what I want to end with right now is just, again, we can't change what the markets are doing. We're at the height of the market right now. But remember, don't stop your saving and investing goals. Act as though working and you don't need the money, like I said before, who really cares if it goes down? It's going to come back up. Markets always rebound. So with that, thank you guys so much for joining me this week on ASMR Money Mentor. If you're getting enjoyment or education out of these episodes, please give me a like. I would really appreciate it. And consider subscribing to my channel as well. I'm Evan Thomas, and I'll see you next time on ASMR Money Mentor.